Hello everyone, my name is Sam Bass. I'm with the Market Intelligence team here at Open Minds, and today as part of our Circle Elite Executive Roundtable series, we have Open Minds Vice President of Web Services Laird Saper and Senior Associate Nicole Garris, who will be discussing how to drive traffic and measure growth that matters. Laird brings a diverse background of user experience design, project management, customer service, and over 10 years of web development experience to the Open Minds team. In her current role as Vice President of Web Services, Ms. Saper leads our team of web developers, brings technical guidance and business practicality to every web-based application that Open Minds develops, and defines a strategic purpose and unique digital brand for each client project that crosses her path. Nicole Garris is an award-winning marketing and graphic design professional, bringing a vision of a designer, the storytelling of a marketer, and the data-driven decision-making of an analyst. Creating and developing a compelling brand is her primary passion, followed closely by delivering an intriguing and connected customer journey through strategic omni-channel marketing plans. Now, before we get started today, we have a couple of brief housekeeping reminders. First, while you are muted during today's briefing, we're open to any questions that you may have. Please feel free to submit those in the chat box. And secondly, the presentation and recording from today's webinar will be available tomorrow on the Open Minds website. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Laird and Nicole.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So let's see if we can click through to the next slide here. How do we advance the slides? Sorry, Sam.
Sorry, which slide is showing right now?
The first one. So I think we just need to click forward twice.
Okay, on my screen it is the agenda slide.
Huh. All right.
One sec, I'm gonna retry sharing.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, great. There's the agenda.
Okay.
Well, I'm very excited to be here today talking with Nicole and all of you. Today we are going to talk about primary web traffic drivers, both organic and paid. We're going to discuss how to effectively use social media. We will be reviewing best practices in email marketing. We will discover how to effectively use targeted advertising, and we will assess ROI on your virtual presence investments. Okay. So oftentimes we think building the website is the all we have to do, and really it's the first step to building an effective online presence. So always the question is, you have a website, now what? Now how do we get people there? And when we talk about website traffic, it's usually helpful to break down the types of traffic that are likely to come to your site. Usually when we do this, we look at about 5 different groups of types of traffic drivers to sites.
Yes, and usually the only reason why we bucket these out is because it's so much easier to keep track of how your marketing and your investments are working. So really that's why we define these 5 buckets that you're going to see below. So kicking it off, direct traffic is referring to literally someone typing in www.yourbusiness.com or org and going directly to your website. So how do users find this out? Typically it's through word of mouth or really great awareness campaigns that they know of your brand, they know of your business, and they are typing that direct URL into the bar and going directly to your website.
Obviously, that's like the most valuable type of traffic, but how do you get that kind of traffic? And usually that's where you leverage the other 4 types to build the first. So the second type is organic traffic, which is the type that most of us in web development are focused on when we're talking to our clients about how to optimize your site for search engines and how to really focus on ranking those keywords and how to perform better. So organic is the customer or the audience that goes to the search engine and types in a keyword or phrase. They are looking for something specific, and your site comes up in a list of results. So they click, and that is how they come to your site. So when we're talking about organic traffic, that is what we're talking about.
Perfect. And leading into referral, this is usually referring to paid traffic for the most part, but it could be unpaid as well. So referral can also include the next two, the social and email. We separate those out because those are two of the largest types of tactics that you can use to drive traffic, and you want to measure those independently, and we'll go into that a bit later on why. But referral is any form of your link from a link in an email campaign, a social media campaign, Google AdWords, you name it. These are your referral sources that are driving traffic back to your site.
Mm-hmm. Social media is obviously a very critical one. The reason we segment this out a little further, it is technically a type of a referral link, but we do tend to look at this in its own separate bucket because of the fact that it can be very helpful in allocating resources towards this channel and towards this sort of, traffic stream. And so that you can also watch your performance on this metric. So social, this is literally a link that is coming from a social media platform. So whether it's something that you have posted on a channel that you manage, or whether it's a referral from somebody else posting about you on social media and somebody following that link to your site, any link that is followed from a social media platform would count as social traffic.
Yeah. And then finally, rounding this out, looking at email traffic. So to kind of differentiate from the referral, this is not from an email campaign that you are sending out. This is a personal email that is sent from one person to maybe their colleague, their friend, their family member, referring your business or your website, I should say, to them. So this is a much more personalized, intimate form that it's sent across, and actually really provides better results as an effective value on that as well.
And I think one of the interesting things when you start looking at the different ways the traffic comes to your site, two things kind of stand out. One is that when you look at this, we're talking about traffic to your site, and that's very intentional because when we talk about your online presence, your site should be home based. All links and all roads should lead back to your website. And secondly, all of these different types of traffic have different values. So when you think about a casual referral link that somebody follows, that is valuable for sure. But an email that somebody personally that I know that sends me, so if Nicole sends me an email and says, hey, Laird, check out this great site, I am far more likely to click on that link and to take some action that a person that I know has referred me to than I am just like a random recommendation. So when you think about the last one on this list is probably the smallest percentage of your traffic, but it's a very valuable source of traffic. So not all traffic is equal. All traffic should lead back to your website, I think. Kind of the takeaway there.
Yeah.
Okay. And we're now going to talk about social media. I think everybody at this point is on social media on one channel or another. I think it would be almost impossible not to be. Even my kids are starting to be on social media, which is alarming. But there are so many different networks out there and so many different channels. I think it can be very confusing as a business to decide which one to be on. Not all brands should be on all networks. But if you look at these numbers, you can see that worldwide, active users of social media platforms, this is a huge number, 2.8 billion monthly active users on Facebook, 2 billion monthly active users on YouTube. So the numbers are huge. This is 48% of the world's population on social media. So this is obviously an audience that you really can't afford to ignore when building your online presence.
Right, exactly. I mean, the opportunities here are endless, but you do want to be smart about what channels you're choosing to be on and why. So the worst mistake you can do is just jump on all these as fast as possible. Really advise clients to take their time in making the decision, and we've kind of set up some things to help you decide. So the first thing I always have clients assess is your resources. So think about your current staff, who has the time availability to do this, because this is a time commitment. Posting, for writing, for doing any of the creative associated with these, there is a large time requirement for each of these. And below, you have kind of broken out the format or the post types. So if you have limited staff availability and also think about their skill sets, and they, yeah, like Laird said earlier, this is the time to be honest with yourself and with them.
Yes.
If you're not a video editor or a video producer, probably wouldn't recommend you going after YouTube as your first stake. Same thing with Instagram. I mean, these are very high quality photos. Whereas when you're looking at, say, Facebook or LinkedIn or Twitter, the image quality isn't the focus of those posts.
Yep.
You'd be a lot safer with the storytelling and then like a normal average image versus throwing one up on Instagram and hoping that as well.
Yeah. No, I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just think that's so important to just really understand sort of the expectations of the platform in terms of quality of content is just as important as understanding the expectations of the platform in terms of frequency of content, which we'll talk about, I think, in a bit. But the quality of the content is a huge piece of it. And when we think about, I think it's fascinating how fast the public perception of photography has changed with the advent of sites like Unsplash and Pinterest and Instagram. And so we've gone like almost overnight from one expectation of photographs where we used to only, as the, it's the public sort of expect glossy, high quality photographs in magazines and professional advertising. Now we're sort of expecting it on these social media platforms, and it's very apparent when people don't have the professional photography on Instagram or like, high quality photographs on Instagram, that sort of thing. I just think that's an interesting, it's an important thing to take note of.
Right, exactly. And if we move on to the next slide, the second thing after you evaluate your resources and their skill sets, both in terms of hours and skills, then we're going to take a look at demographics. So you have your target audience identified, you built a website to target and encourage them to take action on your site. So let's find a social media platform that also aligns with that target audience. So at a high level, if you're looking at these platforms, Facebook by far has the oldest demographics amongst all social media networks. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, YouTube has the youngest. And then also Instagram leaning more on that younger side, with LinkedIn and Twitter about mid to mid-range age there, I guess I would define that as.
Right. I do think, excuse me, for those that have the content and the ability to produce videos, I do think it's worth looking at the time spent per day. Because if you look at that YouTube number, you've got your average user spending almost 42 minutes a day on the platform, which is pretty amazing. I mean, even Facebook, 38 minutes a day, that's a huge opportunity.
Yes, exactly. Like you said, if you've got the skill and you've got the time to invest in YouTube, industry-wide, video is becoming the go-to format, whether it's closed captioning, so no sound graphics, short videos. It is overwhelmingly the most popular format of post online overall. So if you definitely have that skill set, the capability, and if it's within your target audience, would definitely make that push toward YouTube or video supporting platforms like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that I do think on our next slide we're going to talk about is some overall takeaways and some best practices and some cautionary advice. So on the takeaways, I think clearly we want to make sure that we have resources to approach a new channel. We don't want to adopt all of the social networks all at once. So you want to make sure that whatever choice you make, the social media channels you choose are in alignment with your brand. You want to make sure you have the resources to pursue and to keep up with posting on one of these channels. I mean, the last thing I think, as Nicole mentioned, you want to do is start posting and not post enough to keep a channel active and engaged. And one of the things I always tell clients is that when you're thinking about adding a social media network to your online presence, it's really, really important to remember that you are augmenting your brand in this way. So adding a link to Facebook or to Twitter or to any of these networks on your site is great. If when a reader follows that link or goes to that channel, your brand is active, engaged, they can reach out, they are getting information that they can't get on your website, and there's something for them to engage with and do there. If, however, you put the link on your site, post for a week, and then abandon the channel, what you have done is basically created a road to nowhere off your site. And more dangerously, you're creating an opportunity that leads your readers off of your website to a very distracting platform. So if they're not engaged by you on the platform, they will be distracted by somebody else on it. And the likelihood of them returning to your site from that moment is pretty low. So just like you would not have a dinner party and not be there, don't start a social media network or social media channel and bail, I guess would be my advice.
Right, so true. And you don't, I mean, it's just a bad overall visual for your brand as well, because it looks like it could also insinuate that you're not keeping your website up to date, or you wouldn't be receptive if someone submitted a contact form through one of those channels as well. So very dangerous road to take down there. Also, when you're looking at these from a high level, in addition to your resources, your target audience demographics, just a quick understanding of what they're primarily used for will also be helpful, and a third deciding factor in either choosing or choosing to reestablish a network, I guess I'd say. So Facebook, primarily business to consumer, that's a home base for that. LinkedIn, on the other side of the spectrum, business to business. It's their professional home base, also used for recruiting, hiring, building that company kind of corporate culture so you can attract talent as well. YouTube is surprisingly the second largest search engine in the world behind Google. So also very huge opportunities here. There's a lot of marketers going toward this channel in particular because of this opportunity to use hashtags, to be more discoverable, to have people searching for these videos and popping up more frequently for their brand. Instagram, very visual branding, very short storytelling, images, beautiful kind of post in general. And then Twitter, I'd say it's a very fast-paced social media network. So if you're not consistently producing new content very quickly and posting about it, or if you're not conducting customer service, this is a great place for software as a service companies to kind of gather those issues, answer them quickly, and get it out to the, I guess, the audience at large. If you're not falling into one of those two categories, I'd almost recommend to stay away from Twitter. It's a larger time investment because you're needing to be posting much more frequently. And say, for example, you post 2 to 3 times a week in Twitter. That's not really going to show you any of the results you want to see from that platform. But if you were doing the same thing over here in Facebook, 2 to 3 times a week is perfectly acceptable and normal on that platform. So just another kind of how it's used, the frequency of the posting, that to keep in mind when you're really selecting that channel that you want to invest in and go for.
Yep. And I think really if done right, any one of these channels or any of the other many channels that are out there can be done. If it's done right, it can be a very, very effective tool for your business. And by right, I mean, really, as long as you're active on your social media channel, as long as it is up to date, as long as it is in alignment with your brand, you want to keep your tone non-controversial unless that is your brand. You want to be authentic. Most people use social media as a way to engage and have conversations. So you want to keep your posts and your engagement authentic. What about hashtags, Nicole?
Hashtags are a huge deal, and you should use them all across social media. All these platforms that we have shown here, and I think for, I'll say, the majority of other social media platforms, even TikTok, etc., all utilize hashtags and grouping like things of information, help people search through their platforms. I will say with a warning, if you're planning on using hashtags, which you should be sure to look up that hashtag before you put in your posts, because sometimes people will use different hashtags with a meaning that you think has a completely different meaning. And you could risk being associated with either a statement or another post or brand that doesn't align with yours. So really just use those hashtags. A quick Google search or even hashtag whatever you're using in these platforms will pull up similar results, just to make sure you're in the clear for that's exactly how you want your content to be grouped and your post to go as well.
Right. Does anybody have any questions about social media platforms specifically or generally? I know I always get questions about TikTok. What do you have you been getting a lot of questions from clients about TikTok, Nicole?
Yes, and you know me, I'm also a huge fan of TikTok, but
it's a great platform.
It is really, in the advent of video and those kind of short format videos really exploding across the internet in popularity. This platform has really gone the extra mile, making it very nice for their users, very genuine. I know there's a lot of newspaper brands, there's all kinds of brands that are now getting involved in TikTok. So if you're familiar with the platform, or even if you take a look, it is an interesting way to get involved in that short video format. They do have editing tools, that kind of thing, use hashtags. It's definitely a larger time investment, I would say, as far as the creative goes. So it's not going to be like a Facebook post where you snap a photo, write a story, and then post. You will have to do a little bit of editing and syncing with the audio pieces there, but that is a nice upcoming platform. I think they recently announced that they had 1 billion users now.
Wow.
So they are rapidly overcoming even Instagram in popularity.
That's amazing.
Hey, Laird and Nicole.
How about you?
One question here. So I guess it depends on the expected ROI, but what's the consideration for having somebody internal doing it versus hiring a consultant to do it, somebody external? Like, what would be the maintenance upkeep for things like that?
I think the things that, and Nicole, I would love to hear your perspective on this. The things that I usually take into consideration when advising a client on that would be resources, as Nicole said, and the level of experience that the internal team had with managing that network. I think at the very least, it's really worthwhile to make sure you talk with somebody that has experience with that platform and with managing social media accounts to get at least a foundation and sort of a starting plan in place. I think it's really key. We're all used to keeping editorial calendars for our promotions and for our blog posts. I think it's incredibly key to also look at your social media the same way. So when you're planning on taking on a new brand, a new channel, I think if you don't have that experience in-house, maybe you have somebody that can manage it once you get a plan in place. But I think it is very worthwhile to speak with somebody, maybe an outside agency or a social media manager, to help get the foundation of a management plan in place, so that you know that you get off to a solid start with that platform. What do you think, Nicole?
Yes, absolutely, completely agree. And really, I would make a decision based on what channel you're going after. So if your audience is in YouTube and you need to go after videos and content creation, I would hire for that skill set. So, you know, somebody who specializes in obviously social media marketing, but also creation of those short or those kind of branded videos that you need to get that channel up and running. So again, evaluating the skill set you've got, the availability that they have to manage it, and then what channel you're going after, because that can also help you make a decision on the type of talent you need and the time investment as well. Great question.
And
Any
then
other questions?
one more question for this section. So if I'm starting a Facebook page right now, and you're saying to have a certain amount, like how many posts do you think should be there before I link it from my website?
I think it's less about how many posts are there. versus how many posts are planned and committed on your calendar. So I think you're safe to launch once you have claimed the page name and you have like an easy to remember link. And you know the requirements for that change periodically on
Updated
Facebook.
contact info.
You want to make sure that you have the page set up with a call to action, that you have, yeah, like Nicole said, your updated information, that you have good graphics like in the banner, etc. And you want to have at least 1 or 2 posts introducing yourself. But I think it's perfectly acceptable at that point, as long as you have a plan and you're like, yes, we are going to be posting, and these are our posting schedule, to go ahead and start advertising it at that point. As long as you're committed and you have a plan and you're going to stick to it.
Completely agree. And 1 to 2 posts, I mean, just have branding posts, even if it's just like, you know, this is our new Facebook page, just an announcement about it, back to your website, something of value to the brand. So whether, you know, it's a new feature, an offer, or whatever that you can have as your secondary post. And then just like Laird said, just making that kind of time and energy commitment to continue posting 2 to 3 times a week, or however you want to within Facebook, to keep that page updated and fresh. So if people follow you, they'll be getting your, you know, your post and your awareness push that you're putting out as you grow that page too. Real good questions though.
Yeah, those are great questions. And sorry, I think I lost Nicole for a second there. Okay. So one of my favorite topics, and one I'm always, yeah, I can hear you now. One of my favorite topics to talk about is email marketing best practices. And one of the reasons I love talking about it is because Nicole Garris is a genius at this. So I always love picking her brain. I think effective email marketing is as much an art as it is a science. And we could do no better than hearing Nicole's best practices.
Oh, well, thank you. So I love email marketing personally because it is the one-on-one type marketing. So social media, you've got that kind of broader message, that broader awareness, but really email marketing and effective email marketing is that really personalized messaging that you're sending one-on-one to your customers or potential customers. So first, I always tell people to align the strategy for your email marketing with your business goals. Obviously, what do you want them to do once they get to your site, and align that with your email strategy. So when you're building an email list and an opt-in list, which is what you got to do first to get everybody there and subscribing to your emails and receiving these messages regularly, is think about what do you want your potential customer or your customers to know, and then what do you want them to do. So for example, if you have your schedule opening up for November, you can send an email out to everybody letting them know that is open now and you can register, and oh, here's how to book your appointment, click book your appointment. So very clear messaging on what you want them to know, what you want them to do. The other thing that I really emphasize is making sure that once you get a good list going, segment that list by interest or location or whatever's relevant to your users. So if they come in and they've received X service from you, if you have that service coming up at a discount, maybe you have a coupon, or maybe you have a limited time offer for that specific service, segment the folks who have done it before, send them that email blast out, and send a different one to others that might have not tried it and might be considering trying it. Frequency or an experimentation. So sending it out regularly enough to keep that contact and to keep that brand reputation and awareness going, but not too frequently that you cause people to unsubscribe.
I am fascinated by how quickly the segmentation ability is kind of growing in these email platforms. You know, I'm thinking specifically about MailChimp, which now lets you segment, you know, down like on a really granular level. You know, you can send out a campaign and segment based on who opened it, and you can segment even further. So you can, you know, segment based on
Right.
location, et cetera, and then you can further segment based on who interacted with the campaign, who interacts most often with your campaigns, which is one of the reasons why I said, it's an art and a science. It's, really knowing how to leverage those tools to use this channel to your advantage.
Right. And the second best thing of this is that it doesn't have to be reactive. So you can be proactive and build automated kind of series of email blasts too. So I think we were talking about this earlier, Laird, where if you have somebody new sign up, you get that welcome series set up. So it's like an onboarding, right? You got a welcome, this is the business. Second email, maybe a week later, here's some other features you might not know we do, or here's more about us, the team, the staff that works there, depending on what your business goal is and what you want them to know, and again, what you want them to do.
I think one of the most effective and, most it's such a win, those onboarding campaigns, because it really is like that first interaction you have with somebody. It's that first impressions matter kind of moment. You have somebody that just got excited enough about your brand to sign up, and you have their attention. And I think not leveraging those onboarding campaigns is really a wasted opportunity, because that's an excited subscriber. That's somebody that is interested in your brand in that moment. So I always advise clients to kind of seize that moment, whether it's a 3 email onboarding, whether it's to sending a welcome, this is what to expect from us. You can really set the stage. You can ease people's minds, let them know, hey, we're not going to be emailing you every day. We're going to be emailing you once a week. And I think you alluded to this before, that frequency issue. This is another place where you can offer people a choice. You can say, hey, if at any point, you're getting too many emails from us, check out your preferences page and you can update and, receive a digest or not receive updates about this particular kind of thing. But this is really a great opportunity to let people know how you're going to be interacting with them through this channel and how to manage anything that they don't want from you. And it's a great way to sort of build trust from the get-go and to just absolutely capitalize on that initial excitement from subscribing to your brand.
Right, exactly, and personalize that engagement further and further as you go along. So how frequently do you want to receive communications from us? What topics or offers do you want to receive from us in the future? So really they're in the driver's seat of the engagement, leading that engagement, and you're just kind of capitalizing on that opportunity as you follow along.
I think when we look at email, it's one of the most, it's one of those things that's like, it's a long game. It's not like a single interaction, right? It's a relationship that you form. So instead of just having one interaction with somebody in one opportunity, an email relationship with a client or a customer or a readership really lets you embrace sort of the whole scope of our engagement flower on the screen here. So really the purpose of email marketing is to do these things, right? So we want to attract people to our brand. We want to guide them through using our brand or our product or our service. We really want to nurture our relationships with our customers and our readers. We want to convert people. If they're not customers already, we want them to be brand ambassadors, and we want to inform them about exciting news or products. All of these things obviously have in common engagement. So if you have to like streamline your one takeaway for email, it should be engaging above all else. It should be a way to reach out and really build a long-term relationship with your customer, I think.
Right, absolutely.
One thing that I do think is very interesting, and we'll talk more about this in the next slide, but for about a decade now, metrics regarding email engagement have remained pretty much the same. So people have been talking about open rates and click-through rates and unsubscribe rates and bounces for about a decade. But with the sort of increasing focus on consumer privacy, both at the institutional and government level, I think we're seeing a big shift in what's going to be reportable and what is going to be actionable information. So I think the open rate is doomed Apple is already rolling out changes to let people, really obfuscate their email address, whether or not they open things. And I know, Nicole, you've told me before you didn't think the open rate was valid to begin with, and what are your thoughts on that?
Right, not at all. Yeah, it's not, I don't feel it to be a true form of engagement, because you think about your own inbox, how you're scrolling through, and you might click not actually read it. So a lot of ways it's misleading. Then there's also, they usually use a 1 pixel download to let you know that somebody has opened your email. And with the advent of a lot of image in the email services, we're seeing less and less of that. And then privacy, of course, coming up next. So you've got the loss of the actual open rate. You're not going to really have that or see that register correctly from there on out. And then, yeah, I think that one's going away. And the better metric to rely on here really is the click-through rate. So someone's actually opening it, one, and then reading your messaging, and then taking that action that you wanted them to take. So that by far is the best metric to use. And I know we have here standards for open rates, click-throughs, industry standards, which you can find online. And then secondarily, to kind of measure if you've hit that sweet spot of frequency and segmentation, you've got the opt-out rate, right? So if people are going to unsubscribe from your emails, that's going to be natural, but you want that growth rate or the how quickly you're accumulating new opt-in members to your email always be higher and by a decent percentage than your opt-out rate.
Right. And just on the topic of privacy, I also think we're coming to a point where I hope nobody's doing this anymore, but I know back in the day, people would routinely just kind of get lists of email addresses or people they wanted to add to their list, and they would just throw them on their email list. And, I think increasingly with the focus on compliance and privacy and people's right to own their own information, that is going to get people in more trouble than it did in the past. So along with the open rate being a thing of, increasingly less use, I think really it's more important now than ever to follow those best practices, to use an opt-in list to make sure that anybody on your list actually meant to be there, that you don't have, Aunt Sally's entire address book in your newsletter campaign or whatever, because you want to avoid being marked as spam and you want to keep your unsubscribe rate low.
Exactly. Then if you're marked as that, no one will receive your email campaigns, and you'll pretty much be done there. It's so important to get that natural opt-in, probably through your website. So you're always going to want to be offering something through your email marketing that you don't have on your website.
Right.
So, promotions, announcements, special offers, etc.
Yeah, free ebooks, a white paper you can't get anywhere else, a webinar that is limited to people who are subscribed. I mean, when you really think creatively, the things that you can use to incentivize subscribers, the sky is kind of the limit, especially with all the digital assets that you can. I mean, usually brands have assets that they're already using that they can easily, kind of repackage and leverage to this purpose, which is kind of a nice way to not, reinvent the wheel, and to make your marketing go further.
Right, exactly. And I just want to touch on some of those strategies. I know we've gone over some of the offering the choices to readers, but design-wise, if you're not seeing a whole lot of click-throughs, there are a lot of different ways to approach this and edit your email designs so that you can get that improved. So right now, best practice is using multiple call to action buttons within emails. So again, kind of providing that choice in a different way. So it's not just you have to register now, it's register now or learn more. So either getting folks back to your website without that commitment, and then your website should finalize that job of getting them to take that action. I mentioned this about the open rate with the 1 pixel download, measuring that percentage, but streamlining your imagery. There are a lot of image blockers now within the email services. So limiting imagery and using it purposely within your email, no super huge images. I know a lot of like MailChimp will help you out there if you have huge images that you're about to send out and crash everyone's computer. They'll fix that, but just being mindful of that. And then again, the segmentation for the better engagement down there.
And along with the segmentation, and I don't think we touched on this, depending on what sort of website you have, it's also important to talk to you know, your web designer or your web developers about integrations from your website to your newsletter service, because oftentimes you know, we can set up triggers like if a customer has purchased something, we can then tag their, you know, their profile in the newsletter account so that you know, you can kind of get a really full picture of your customer across their entire lifespan with your product line, so that you can really take advantage of those segmentation possibilities.
Yes, love that.
On the topic of taking advantage of segmentation opportunities and targeting better things. But first, do we have any questions about email? What's your favorite, Nicole, email marketing quick fix, if you will, like to get click rate up?
Mine is always going to be design related, typically. So bringing that call to action button up, keeping what you want them to know and what you want them to do simple and concise. You'd be surprised how many I see out with large paragraphs of explanations or information before the call to action. So typically it's shortening that, keep it simple, and then getting that call to action button raised up. Usually I can see pretty instant results by doing those two things off the bat for email segmentation marketing.
That's it.
Talk about.
That's a great tip, actually.
Hey, Laird and Nicole, we have a question here. What are your best practice recommendations for subject line and pre-headers?
Oh, that's a great one. Nicole always has amazing subject lines, so I'd love to hear how she constructs them.
Yes, so this is difficult, and I'll tell everybody with marketing, it's a lot of experimentation, a lot of testing, but as an overall general rule, short subject lines, the shorter the better, get the most opens, and the longer, more descriptive subject lines usually don't get as many opens, but will get higher click-throughs of the folks that opened. So it's kind of trying to hit that middle sweet spot for your audience. But if you have a, you know, a large announcement maybe that doesn't require so much action with it, just like a big, like we're opening a new location at blah, 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 right? You're going to want that short subject line to get people's attention, to open it, read your message, right? You don't want that action. But if you want something more like,
right?
Yes. If you want something very action oriented, then try to be a little more descriptive within your subject line so it meets the expectations of what they're opening. So they open it, they kind of get the most of the gist from your descriptive subject line. It's what they thought it was going to be, it's what they want, and they take that action from you. Whereas, you know, the shorter subject line is more ambiguous but more interesting for people to open up a lot faster. How about you, Lynn?
That makes sense. No, I think that makes sense. I mean, obviously you're more the content end of things, but that is what I've noticed as well. I mean, I think anytime you can give people, you can sort of answer a question about how long this will take. If it's an action-oriented thing, you know, you tend to get better action. And if it's not an action-oriented email, if you can just raise curiosity, then you're, you know, those kinds of subject lines usually, when I'm looking at analytics and reports, those are the ones that usually jump out, the ones that make you curious, fun, you know, sort of interesting things that play on something that may be happening in, you know, larger culture. It obviously depends on your brand, but they are also, you know, I think it's one of the places you can make a real impact. You know, I think Nicole and I were talking the other day about sort of like the iterative nature of being able to test on these platforms. So like with email, it's pretty easy to construct an email, and in most platforms you can do an A/B test. So maybe you want to test your subject line. You know, MailChimp makes it very easy to do an A/B test. So maybe you change the subject line and your call to action in the email, and you see which one performs better. We have so many tools now that we can use to see, which version of a thing actually performs better, that we no longer have to really rely on our own gut feeling about a subject line or a call to action. We can actually test it. And I think that's kind of where the science part comes in. The art part comes in, where you use, this, like Nicole has this, like all this great experience with being able to craft it and like really get close to the message that you want to send the first time. And that is beautiful. And then leverage those tools to really just fine tune. And I think if you can do those things, then you can have a very successful and hopefully long lasting relationship with your clients over email.
Great. And I'll just add a side note there as something totally unrelated, but don't be afraid of using emojis in your subject line either if you really want to capture some extra attention and it's on brand for you. Really, it's funny, the feedback I've gotten from using some of those or experimenting with some of those, people tend to open them much more so than those without. So it's kind of that visual imagery being interplayed, but I know that's kind of a new offering for some of the email platforms, but just kind of keep that in mind. If it's appropriate, if it's a big announcement, something like that, you want to get that extra attention, emojis are available to put in your subject line now.
Do you think that's also that it adds sort of a tone of fun to the email?
Oh yeah. Oh yes, definitely.
I mean, I think I would
extra.
try to, yeah, like a little nice pop in your inbox. It's definitely going to get your attention for one, and it's not the dry, boring subject line that we're, the ones you would just scroll past. I think, yeah, inject a little levity, fun, excitement.
All the above.
Any other questions, Sam? Guess not. Okay. Targeted advertising. This is a question. This is one we get a lot of questions about because it's obviously what everybody wants to know how to do better.
Yes, it's so huge. I mean, we could spend, I don't know how
days, weeks,
many
months.
webinars, a huge webinars on this particularly. So we're going to try to look at it from a super, super, super high level. So when I'm advising people, yes, you should be advertising. Yes, you should be spending money on marketing to advertise and get your brand out there. As much as we love all this organic stuff we talked about, the email marketing, the social media marketing organically, you are missing out on folks you might not have previously reached organically by not investing in some advertising and really taking that next step for your brand and your awareness reach overall. So some things to think about as you get started going down this avenue, and I'll actually read it backwards because I should have put, what is your budget for up at the top?
Big one.
Not fun question that we have to address. I looked it up and I believe on average, businesses are spending between 2 to 5% of their annual revenue on advertising overall. So you can go more, you can go less, again, but just having that number allotted and then pretty much planning quarterly, I would say, so bucketing that out. From there, let's think about what platforms we're already on. So if we're already posting on social media, we're seeing, what posts work for our audience, what's really getting popular, getting some traction organically. Let's invest in some advertising on that platform. Let's, sponsor a post for Facebook and put it up there. Let's, use a short video that was wildly successful with your audience and see if we can't get that to more people by paying for it, just spreading that out. And who's your audience, considering that demographics feature there, and where are they? So beyond what we're doing organically that's successful, let's see how else we can reach them where they're at. So, I mean, some of the clients I work for target psychiatrists, for example. So the American Psychiatric Association is a huge worldwide, well, no, not that one, sorry. A huge base for psychiatrists. So we like to plan some of our advertising budget around them. So we can get our email blasts that are working internally. We can pay for it and get that sent out to their membership and get some new psychiatrists to look at the information we're sharing and to learn more about our website and our brand. Finally, as you're doing this, what format does your audience prefer? So again, when you're doing all this stuff organically, it can help you in the advertising arena. So are they looking at videos? Are they opening or clicking through for your emails, what format is your audience most engaging with? And also use that over the spectrum too.
And I think, you know, when we talk about where can you advertise and what's available, really, the world is your oyster. There are so many places and venues where you can advertise. And one of the best pieces of advice I've ever heard, I think, actually came from Nicole Garris, who pointed out that, you know, if you know of a place where your audience is and you don't see an immediate a way to advertise in that location, reach out. If it's a website, if it's, you know, whatever it is, if it's a podcast, if it's, you know, a channel that, you know, just reach out to whoever runs it and ask. You never know what will come of that. Maybe you can build a partnership with somebody, and maybe they have been thinking about, you know, adding advertising to their site and haven't gotten that off the ground yet. You just never know, and it never really hurts to ask. But I think it really is important to be where your audience is. So if you find a place that you just feel would be a great fit for you, reach out. And if they say no, reach out again 6 months later. Keep trying. You know, you never know what's going to work.
Right, exactly. There's just so many opportunities, and really, as long as you have an idea or something that would be, you know, mutually beneficial for the business, is whether it's paid or unpaid. Reach out. I mean, I've done, you know, co-branded webinars, just backlinking on each other's websites if it's mutually beneficial for the businesses, so that you can have that extra presence and awareness, that passive marketing. And then if there is opportunities, say they hadn't thought of doing website advertising, like Laird said, at all, and you reached out and you said, hey, you might have the best opportunity to be the first advertiser on their site. But most of these platforms, or the larger ones, will have media kits that you can sort through and see what your options are. But like we said, I mean, it is, you know, especially in this mostly virtual world right now, the world is really your oyster for this.
And like Nicole said, on these established platforms, most of the social media platforms that we talked about today have very full-featured advertising dashboards that you can interact with. I know Facebook, for example, has some of the most advanced sort of audience targeting features that you can find. I think it's the Facebook Pixel that lives everywhere, that tracks everything everywhere. But I mean, it really does build very comprehensive audience profiles and let you really fine tune the audience target. And you can see pretty quickly by using those tools how effective your ad is, who it's reaching, and you can make small but very effective adjustments to those audiences. And it's kind of amazing, you know, the speed with which you can iterate and improve your advertising and your, you know, get that return. Any questions about, I know we're getting short on time, and we didn't get to talk about everything we wanted to, but any questions about targeted advertising?
I'm not seeing any. Do we want to keep?
Yeah, we can keep going.
Yeah, here we go.
Ooh, animations, there you go.
Okay, good. So quickly, I guess we'll talk about how to assess your return on investment. I think this sounds obvious, but I think first and foremost, know what you're measuring. You know, you can advertise and look for a lot of things. Conversions mean different things to different people. So know what you're measuring. Are you measuring likes? This is something you can advertise for on many platforms. Are you measuring new followers? Are you measuring clicks? Are you measuring people that have gone to your website and purchased something? So I think be very clear on what you're measuring so that you know which tool to use to measure it.
Right, exactly. And also why you're measuring those. So in the case here, so if you had a Facebook campaign going, and these are all things that you can measure, likes, clicks, and conversions, right? But likes is going to hold a different weight than a conversion, right? So if you have a campaign that you put out there, it's getting a ton of likes, people are resonating with the content, you got the audience narrowed down, but not so many click-throughs or even conversions at that point, because they'd have to click through to get there. You're going to take a look at that campaign, and you're going to have to clarify the call to action or bring that up further. So maybe they love the storytelling, but then the what do you want them to do gets lost in the middle of that. So maybe shorten the storytelling piece, bring that up. Creative wise, make that a better feature of click here to do X, and then try again, right? You can learn. This is never like a one and done type thing. You're not just going to do one amazing advertising campaign and you're good for the rest of the year. This is going to be a learning experience. I know, Laird, you were talking earlier about the first campaign you put out versus as you move through the process.
Right. I think the other important thing to keep in mind, especially when you start out, especially on social media, is that the effects of your ad campaigns tend to be cumulative. You will get, it's you know, one of those things, the more likes you have, the more likes you'll get. So, you know, if you're just starting out on a platform and your first couple of ads don't have the impact that you want them to have, that does not necessarily mean you should stop advertising. It actually probably means you should continue advertising, but you should probably expand and look at the what exactly you're advertising for. So maybe you do need to actually advertise for likes so that you can get your base on the platform up enough so that when you advertise, you know, you have enough reputation to have that ad shown to more people. A lot of the algorithms sort of base what they show of your content to how many people have already liked your content. And the other thing is to remember that this is all iterative, and none of it, on social media anyway, none of it's really lost. You know, if you run an ad and you get likes where you wanted to get conversions, maybe you didn't get the outcome you wanted, but you've got something that is still valuable, because the more likes you have, again, the more likes you'll get next time. So yes, you want to tweak your process, but I do kind of love that about social media, that it's a bit more forgiving when it comes to, you know, you can go kind of pretty far for your money if you're doing it right, because, you know, unlike a newspaper or something that goes once and is gone, advertising on social media, you're usually going to get at least some benefit out of the ad. Whether it's the benefit that you were hoping for or not is a different story, but it's usually going to be beneficial.
Right, and same thing with any targeted advertising too. And that's what I always tell clients as well. For example, if you didn't get that conversions results that you wanted, and I'll just use this as the case scenario, but you got all those likes, you got that awareness, that is kind of more of that passive action taking. So maybe they your content, they learned about your brand, a few days down the line or weeks or whatever, they have a need for your service and they think about your brand. And then get there to your website, maybe not through social media or that paid advertising that we wanted them to directly go to, but they would get to your website in another way, those traffic, oh my gosh, funnels that we described earlier, right. I would say. And then they would get to your website and take that action at a later date. So no awareness is a wasted awareness. And then, you know, keep that in mind as you're adjusting your spend and your targeting and your creative. And measuring that impact too, that you'll also want to keep an eye on the other channels for traffic as you're running these, because sometimes they won't come in the way that you want them to. You think that they would approach it either.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think I think this is really tied to that psychological idea of priming. You know, if you see something, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been on Facebook and seen an ad sort of out of the corner of my vision and not paid any attention to it, but then found myself on that website like 5 days later. And I think that is because of awareness. You know, we get primed to, like, we notice something, and maybe the 5th time we see it, we click on it because at that point it's in our awareness. And this is something that we know to be a very effective tool. So really, advertising is so important. Being on these networks is so important, and growing your presence is so important, because it all leads to greater awareness for your brand and a greater impact for your online presence, I think.
Absolutely.
And it is 2, so
yes,
I think,
I know, we're great.
What questions do we have? Do we have time for?
I think we have maybe time for one question. There's one in here, is how do you measure billboard advertising?
You know, that is becoming more and more advanced now. I haven't gone down that route, but I did speak with a vendor pretty recently that said they are actually using people's phone IP addresses as they drive by to create these
Interesting.
targeted audiences now. So people that would go to like a Panera, they would know what billboards they drive by.
That's fascinating.
Really, if you know the audience and can target it that way, again, the results would be varied, right? So it depends on your call to action on your billboard, either contact us, a phone number, your website, whatever. But if you run that campaign, you would be able to choose that targeted audience. And then you could look at whatever funnel you were trying to get them to go down and see if that increase corresponds with your campaign run date. So it's actually getting high tech and a little bit creepy, but very good for marketing.
Yeah, and I think you know, if you ever have a question about how to measure the return on it, one of the most effective things is just to make sure that you're sending people to a unique landing place on like your website, because then you can measure the unique, you know, the unique traffic to that specific website page. If it's not something that's like listed everywhere on your website, you're not sending a million ads there. So if you have a billboard and you want to put a specific link to just this one page on your site, then you can kind of measure, even if it's not a high-tech billboard that doesn't have those capacities yet, you could still measure the traffic to where you sent you know, your audience, and see from that angle what the sort of return on investment was. You could get sort of a high-level overview, I think.
Interesting. Yeah, I hadn't heard of either of those. So that's a really good answer. I think that brings us to our time today. Thank you so much, Laird and Nicole, for your
Yeah, thank
time.
you.
Thank you everyone
Yes,
for
thank you.
attending. We have a couple of brief announcements. First, as a reminder, the recording and slide from today's presentation will be available tomorrow on the Open Minds website. And please consider joining us next week. And we're going to have Ken Carr, and he's going to talk about how to design a performance-based compensation model to go above market rate. And then also, we're going to be in Las Vegas in 2 weeks. Let me pull up the, can you see the website or what's showing right now?
Not yet.
Nothing right now.
Sharing.
Laird will be on site for that as well. So that is an extra
Well, I'm
call.
Here we go.
excited.
Yes, Laird, do you have any quick plugs for your presentation?
Yes, I am going to be presenting with the fabulous Sharon Hicks on data security and about how to prevent and manage breaches if they do happen. We will also be presenting with Tim Snyder about next generation websites. So I'm very excited. It's going to be a lot of really great information.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun, and obviously in Vegas, it's a great place to spend the week. You can register at technology.openminds.com. We look forward to seeing you there. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks
Thank you.
all.